Imagine owning a car that could suddenly lose control at high speeds. Now imagine the company that built that car knew about the problem and did nothing. This isn't fiction. This is the real story of the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro. We are going to take you inside Chevrolet's boardrooms, onto the factory floor, and into the lives of those affected by one of the biggest cover-ups in automotive history. The 1969 Chevrolet Camaro was a dream car for many, but beneath its sleek exterior lurked a dangerous secret. This is the story of how a small team of Chevrolet engineers uncovered a potentially deadly flaw that threatened the lives of thousands of drivers. In early 1969, as the latest Camaro models were rolling off the production line, a routine testing session took an unexpected turn. A group of dedicated engineers, tasked with ensuring the safety and performance of Chevrolet's popular muscle car, made a startling discovery. During high-speed maneuvers, they noticed an alarming tendency for the car to suddenly lose steering control. Concerned by their initial findings, the team dove deeper into the issue. They ran test after test, pushing the Camaro to its limits on various road conditions. Each trial confirmed their growing fears. There was a critical flaw in the car's steering system. At high speeds, particularly when cornering or making sudden lane changes, the steering could fail without warning, leaving drivers helpless to control their vehicles. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a minor defect, it was a ticking time bomb. Every 1969 Camaro on the road could potentially become a lethal weapon, endangering not only its occupants but also other motorists and pedestrians. The engineers knew they had to act fast. Over the following weeks, the team worked tirelessly to document their findings. They compiled a comprehensive report detailing the nature of the problem, supported by extensive test results and data. But they didn't stop there. Determined to be part of the solution, they also developed recommendations for potential fixes that could address the steering issue. As the gravity of their discovery sank in, tension began to build within Chevrolet's engineering department. The team knew they were sitting on explosive information that could potentially damage the reputation of one of America's most beloved car brands. But they also understood the enormous responsibility they carried. Lives were at stake. With their report complete, the engineers prepared to present their findings to Chevrolet executives. They expected swift action, perhaps an immediate recall, or at least a thorough investigation. After all, customer safety was paramount, wasn't it? But as they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was far from what they anticipated. Instead of concern and urgency, they were met with skepticism and barely concealed hostility. As they laid out their evidence and explained the potentially catastrophic consequences of inaction, the executives' expressions grew increasingly guarded. The engineers finished their presentation, hearts pounding, waiting for a response that would set in motion a chain of events to protect Camaro owners across the country. But the reaction they received would shake their faith in the company they had dedicated their careers to, and set the stage for one of the most controversial cover-ups in automotive history. The boardroom fell silent as the executives processed the engineers' shocking revelation. But instead of immediate action, what followed was a calculated dance of corporate self-preservation. This is the story of how a group of dedicated engineers became unwitting pawns in a high-stakes game that put profits over people. As the days turned into weeks, the Camaro team waited anxiously for word from above, but the silence was deafening. Whispers began to circulate through the engineering department. Some believed the issue was being thoroughly investigated behind closed doors. Others feared a cover-up was already underway. Among the engineers, one man found himself increasingly troubled by the lack of response. John Anderson, a rising star in Chevrolet's ranks, had poured his heart and soul into the Camaro project. He dreamed of creating cars that would inspire generations of drivers. Now that dream was turning into a nightmare. John couldn't shake the guilt of knowing about the potentially fatal flaw in the Camaro. Every time he saw one on the street, he imagined the unsuspecting driver, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking beneath their hands. The weight of this knowledge began to eat away at him, affecting his work and his home life. As the pressure mounted, John started gathering evidence. He worked late, secretly copying documents and test results after his colleagues had gone home. But his actions didn't go unnoticed. He felt increased scrutiny from his superiors, and even some of his closest co-workers began to eye him with suspicion. John knew he was risking everything: his career, his reputation, and possibly even his safety. The auto industry in 1969 viewed safety recalls as a sign of weakness, and whistleblowers were often treated as pariahs. But the alternative, staying silent while lives hung in the balance, was unthinkable. After weeks of agonizing, John made a life-changing decision. He would expose the truth, no matter the cost. With trembling hands, he gathered his evidence and prepared to take a stand against one of the most powerful corporations in America. As John steeled himself to expose the truth, Chevrolet executives were already in damage control mode. Behind closed doors, an emergency meeting was underway. The atmosphere was tense as department heads gathered to discuss the Camaro's steering issue. This wasn't just about a faulty part, it was a pivotal moment that would shape the company's future. The boardroom was divided. On one side sat those pushing for an immediate recall, their voices filled with urgency. Opposite them were the hardliners, arguing for secrecy at all costs. The debate raged on, with each side presenting their case. Financial analysts projected recall costs in the millions, a figure that made even the most ethical executives wince. Marketing teams outlined strategies to minimize public awareness if word got out. Legal advisors painted a grim picture of potential lawsuits and settlements. As the arguments flew back and forth, it became clear that this decision wasn't just about the bottom line. It was a moral crossroads for Chevrolet. The real question hanging in the air was chilling. How much was a human life worth in dollars and cents? The tension in the room was palpable as the final decision came down. In a move that would haunt Chevrolet for years to come, the executives chose to prioritize profits over public safety. They would not issue a recall. Instead, they opted for a strategy of quiet fixes and hoping for the best. The aftermath of this decision sent shockwaves through the company. Factory workers were instructed to make subtle changes to the production line without explanation. Dealerships received cryptic memos about handling customer complaints. A cloud of secrecy and unease settled over Chevrolet. But here's the real kicker. While Chevrolet thought they were protecting their bottom line, they were actually setting themselves up for a much bigger fall. Because unknown to them, John was about to ignite a firestorm that would make Ralph Nader's "unsafe at any speed" look like a spark in comparison. John Anderson's decision to blow the whistle on Chevrolet's cover-up wasn't just about exposing a faulty steering system. It was about challenging an entire industry's approach to safety. As reports of steering failures in 1969 Camaros began to surface across the country, Chevrolet found itself in a race against time to contain the situation. Media outlets started asking questions, and Chevrolet's PR team went into overdrive. They crafted carefully worded statements, downplaying the severity of the issue and assuring the public that their vehicles were safe. But behind closed doors, executives were in panic mode. They knew that if the full extent of their knowledge became public, the consequences would be dire. Meanwhile, Camaro owners were living with the consequences of Chevrolet's silence. Take the story of Mark Thompson, a 22-year-old college student who bought a used '69 Camaro as his first car. One night, while driving home from a late-night study session, Mark's steering suddenly failed on a sharp curve. He narrowly avoided a head-on collision with an oncoming truck, but his Camaro ended up wrapped around a tree. Mark survived but spent months in physical therapy. Stories like Mark's were becoming all too common. A family in Ohio lost their teenage daughter when her Camaro's steering locked up on the highway. A Texas man was left paralyzed after his car veered off the road at high speed. Each incident added to the growing chorus of voices demanding answers from Chevrolet. As the pressure mounted, John Anderson found himself at the center of a storm. His decision to come forward had cost him his job at Chevrolet, and he quickly became persona non grata in the auto industry. Former colleagues shunned him, and he received threatening phone calls in the middle of the night. But John stood firm, driven by a combination of guilt over his initial silence and a deep-seated belief that the public deserved to know the truth. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration launched a full-scale investigation into Chevrolet's handling of the Camaro steering issue. They combed through years of internal documents, interviewed current and former employees, and conducted their own safety tests. The evidence was damning. Faced with the prospect of a public relations nightmare and potentially crippling lawsuits, Chevrolet finally issued a quiet recall in late 1970. They sent out notices to Camaro owners, describing the recall as a voluntary safety improvement, rather than acknowledging the true nature of the problem. Dealers were instructed to replace the faulty steering components free of charge, but many owners remained unaware of the serious risks they had been facing. The fallout from the Camaro steering scandal had far-reaching consequences. Chevrolet's reputation took a significant hit, and sales of the Camaro model dipped in the following years. The incident also led to changes in automotive safety regulations, with the NHTSA gaining more power to mandate recalls and impose penalties on manufacturers who failed to report safety defects. For classic car enthusiasts and collectors, the scandal added an unexpected twist to the legacy of the 1969 Camaro. While the model had always been prized for its style and performance, it now carried a more complex history. Some collectors sought out unmodified 69 Camaros, viewing them as rare time capsules of a tumultuous era in automotive history. Others specifically looked for recalled and repaired models, seeing them as symbols of an industry forced to confront its responsibilities to consumers. The story of the 1969 Camaro's quiet recall serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between corporate interests and public safety. It's a tale that forever changed how we view the automotive industry and the importance of accountability. This incident didn't just expose a flaw in a beloved muscle car, it revealed the human cost of putting profits before people.